Wasabi guys, welcome back to another how to build around this commander video. And this time we're taking one of the new commander options that was just spoiled for Kamigawa Neon Dynasty's commander product, Shorikai Genesis Engine. This is a 4-mana white-blue legendary artifact vehicle, an 8/8, with a couple abilities. The first one is pay 1 mana and tap to draw 2 cards and then discard a card. You then create a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token with this creature crews vehicles as though its power were 2 greater, which is going to be pretty important, I would imagine, since this vehicle commander has a whopping crew cost of 8. So you would need to tap creatures with total power 8 or more in order to attack or block with Shorikai Genesis Engine. And of course the final condition there is that Shorikai can be your commander, that way it doesn't have to be a creature and you can still play it as your commander. Worth pointing out here that there are probably a lot of anime fans at Wizards of the Coast, definitely some Gundam fans, because it's probably the only way possible to ever include anything like a mech in the Magic multiverse is if you took the Japanese plane of Kamigawa and brought it into the future. So yeah, we have Gundams in Magic the Gathering. I think that's awesome. Goes without saying you're going to want to have vehicles in a vehicle commander deck, and I think some of the best ones are right here. We have Smuggler's Copter, so you kind of get the same loot ability, but it's just a draw and discard, so not as good, but still, crew cost of 1 makes it very easy to get it out there early. Cultivator's Caravan's another great one because when it's not in use, it's a good mana rock. Sky Sovereign Console Flagship deals a little bit of damage, 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls whenever it attacks or enters the battlefield. Peace Walker Colossus can help us bypass the crew cost, where we just pay that 2 mana to have another target vehicle we control become an artifact creature until end of turn. Weatherlight is a way that we can get through our deck as well. We benefit off the historic heavily with this commander option since we're going to be focusing on blue and white artifacts. Silent Submersible is another great one where we get to draw cards if we deal combat damage. And Parhelion, also from War of the Spark, is just nothing but power. We get angel creature tokens whenever we attack with it. It's got decent stats, a 5/5 flying first strike vigilance, but it is a whopping 8 mana. And if you like Cosima, the flip side of that from Kaldheim was the Omen Keel. So whenever a vehicle you control deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles that many cards from the top of their library. You may play lands from among those cards for as long as they remain exiled. To me, I think this is a must include if you're going to be playing a vehicle deck, since it applies to all of your vehicles whenever they deal combat damage. You're also going to want to have things that directly synergize with vehicles outside of just vehicles themselves. We have Gear Shift Ace. Whenever it crews a vehicle, that vehicle gains first strike until end of turn. But what's even better, I think, is the newer card Kotori, Pilot Prodigy. Gives all of our vehicles a crew cost of 2. So we don't even have to worry about anything else if we have Kotori out there. At the beginning of combat on our turn, we can give both lifelink and vigilance to an artifact creature we control, which I would consider that to be a pretty good deal. And if you are planning on playing on a budget, Deadeye Quartermaster is not a bad card. It's a creature ETB that gives you a tutor for an equipment or a vehicle card. And having the flexibility of choosing between those two, I think, is going to offer you the benefit of searching up something that's more for protection purposes like a Lightning Greaves instead of a vehicle if you don't need one. And continuing with the theme of vehicle support, don't discount the value of anthems, because artifact creature anthems are going to help you out, especially when it comes to crewing up some of our bigger vehicles. Chief of the Foundry gives them +1/+1, and so does Master of Ethereum. But Tempered Steel is probably one you want to play in this deck because it gives all of your artifact creatures +2/+2. The fewer creatures that you have to tap in order to crew means that you're going to have more creatures available to block. Speaking of blocking, we have artifacts that will help us do that if we need to. Manifold Key, Unwinding Clock, Clock of Omens, they all make it possible for us to crew these vehicles more than just once in a turn cycle. It's also important considering that our commander option does tap for that first ability where you draw 2 and then discard a card. So if you want to be able to crew in addition to doing that, I think something like Unwinding Clock is a must. And then we move on to generic artifact support. This is going to be the backbone of pretty much any artifact-focused deck, no matter if it's vehicles or any other strategy. Ethereum Sculptor, Foundry Inspector, and Joyrus Familiar make it so much easier to get through your deck, especially if you have 2 of these at the same time, because it will make your costs significantly cheaper. And since our commander option is an artifact, it will make having to get through commander tax a little bit less painful. Another thing we want to focus on here is help in the graveyard department. Our commander does make us discard a card if we draw 2, so we want to get some artifacts back or we want to potentially set our graveyard up. Academy Ruins is never a bad thing to have in just any artifact deck. Sitting on that ability on a land I think is too good to pass up. Scrap Trawler is great, sits on the field. 3 power for 3 mana, it's also good to crew up some vehicles. Metalwork Colossus is guaranteed to crew up whatever we need to crew up, and it's so easy to bring back, you just sacrifice 2 artifacts. It's easy to cast because it kind of has affinity without it actually being affinity. And then we have Emery, Lurker of the Loch, who is all about bringing back artifacts from our graveyard, helping us cast them from our graveyard. And we're going to have some artifact-focused ways of drawing cards here. Big one, of course, is Swamp Senior Edificer. Whenever we cast a vehicle spell, we will draw a card. But I also really like Esper Sentinel and Thought Monitor. Esper Sentinel, we have a ton of ways of making its power greater, so that we're almost guaranteed to get that card draw. And Thought Monitor, most of the time, is going to be a 1-mana 2/2 flyer that enters the battlefield and draws us 2 cards. It's an artifact creature. We have a lot of good synergies with artifact creatures. One of the most underrated cards from 2021 in my opinion, and I will totally be using it for this deck. Then we have artifact-focused protection, how we keep our artifacts out there, how we keep our board presence. Rebecca, Architect of Ascension from Commander Legends, gives all of our artifacts protection from each converted mana cost among artifacts we control. So if we have one that's 3 mana, if we have one that's 5 mana, maybe we have an artifact land, we will have protection from 0, 3, and 5. So I think she's very underrated, and of course having protection through a creature means that you have ways of crewing up your vehicles. So if you can get creatures to do the majority of the heavy lifting in the deck, you want that because it's just pure upside for our commander. And then we have Indomitable Archangel, kind of the same idea. We want protection coming from our creature. It's a little bit riskier, you do need Metalcraft, and you are giving your artifacts Shroud. So you do have to be careful of maybe something being dead if you do this. I still like it though, I'm going to be playing it. That's a lot of power, that's what you can use to crew up some vehicles. And then of course Darksteel Forge for when you're not feeling like playing nicely. And something that I think is worth pointing out is that if you go back to Commander 2021, we did receive a lot of solid artifact support that you're probably going to want to include in this deck. We have Lochiel, Clockwork Scholar. You prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to attacking artifact creatures you control. All of our vehicles when they're attacking are artifact creatures. And whenever one or more artifact creatures enter the battlefield under your control, you draw a card. That ability is not going to be as useful since most of our vehicles are just going to enter as non-creatures. Bronze Guardian, I like Ward. It's another form of protection. Its power is equal to the number of artifacts you control, which does make it easier to crew vehicles whenever you have something massive like this. A lot of potential with Double Strike. It's definitely one that I'm considering. And then we have Angel of the Ruins. I've talked about this card so much. If you're just looking for a good solid artifact creature that serves some utility purpose, here you go. You get your removal, enters the battlefield, you exile up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments, no condition, just straight up remove 2 things. It's so good. 5/7, good body, good stats. And what I think is probably going to be one of the stronger strategies, one of the strongest ways that you can build around Shorikai Genesis Engine, is by playing anything that will give you more token support. The more token support that you get, the easier it's going to be to crew up your vehicles, easier it's going to be to leave up blockers. This deck is going to be all about combat and focusing on the triggers that you get with your vehicles. So all of these cards right here, they're going to make it easier for us to get those tokens and then rely heavily on our vehicles. Mirrodin Besieged is an awesome card that you should totally consider because it also acts as kind of a win-con. If we choose Phyrexian at the beginning of our end step, we draw a card, then we discard a card, then if there are 15 or more artifacts in our graveyard, target opponent loses the game. Not why I included it in the video, but it's pretty funny if you are able to get that off. The first one, however, if you decide to choose that first mode, whenever you cast an artifact spell, you create a 1/1 colorless mirror artifact creature token. The rest of the cards here kind of serve a similar purpose. Psymaster Thopterus gives you Thopter tokens. Digside Engineer gives you construct artifact creature tokens that get bigger for each artifact you control. Golem Foundry gives you golems. You do have to wait for the charge counters to build up. You do get 3/3s off of that though. Efficient Construction's another one where we get Thopter tokens from. And Ethereum Spinner gives us a Thopter token each time we cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater. So anyway guys, let me know what you think about Shorikai Genesis Engine. If you appreciate the video and you want to see more ways of building around other commanders in the future, please do subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. This is Commander Void, I will see you all next time.